a single shoe. Just one shoe, its colors as vibrant as if it had just been pulled from the box, and sits quietly on a boulder at 9,500 feet in the Colorado mountains. Not a scratch, not a speck of dirt, despite enduring 4 brutal winters. Nearby lies a pair of inside-out pants, a jacket strewn across the ground, and a human tooth placed neatly on a log like some twisted offering. These belong to Jared, a young boy who vanished on a trail without a trace. No scream, no sign of a struggle, no clue as to where he went. And Jared isn't alone. Hundreds of others, innocent children, seasoned hunters, brilliant scholars, have disappeared in America's national parks, leaving behind bizarre clues, unanswered questions, and a creeping fear what is really happening in these majestic wildernesses. These forests where winding trails lead you deep into the shadows, where towering mountains block out the sun, and where rivers whisper secrets no one dares to hear. These are America's national parks, Yosemite Great Smoky Mountains Vale, and countless others stretching from the Pacific coast to the Appalachian Trail. They're not just havens for nature lovers. They're stages for some of the most chilling mysteries this country has ever seen. For decades, from 1954 to as recently as 2019, hundreds of people have walked into these places and never come out. They don't just go missing, they vanish as if erased from the earth, leaving behind personal items arranged in ways that seem to mock those searching for them. And the scariest part, the people tasked with protecting us from park rangers to the FBI seem to be hiding the truth. Think of Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy with a bright smile and a slight learning disability. In June 1969 at Spence Field in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis was playing hide-and-seek with his family on a warm Father's Day afternoon. His father, a brilliant architect named William Martin, kept his eyes on the boy as Dennis ran to hide behind a tree just a few yards away. 30-40 seconds, Mr. Martin later recalled, his voice trembling. That's all it took for my son to disappear. When everyone called, "Come out, Dennis," the boy didn't appear. Mr. Martin rushed to the tree, but there was no Dennis. No footprints, no broken branches, no sound. The boy had vanished right before his father's eyes on a trail next to the famous Appalachian Trail. Dennis's story is just one of hundreds of strange disappearances I've spent years investigating as a former police officer turned journalist. I've hiked rugged trails, spoken with heartbroken families, and faced locked doors from authorities. What I've found isn't just stories of loss, it's a terrifying pattern. The people who vanish often fall into 2 groups: brilliant minds like graduate students from UC Berkeley, or vulnerable souls like the elderly, disabled, or children. They disappear in fleeting moments of solitude, and what's left behind, if anything, are clues that defy explanation, like Jared's shoe, or a blurry photo containing what looks like a strand of DNA. Picture yourself walking a trail in Yosemite where towering granite cliffs surround you like silent giants. The sun sets, and a cold breeze carries the scent of damp earth and pine. You hear a noise, maybe just a squirrel, but your heart races. It's 1954. And 2 young men, Orvar Van Was and Walter Gordon, both stellar students at UC Berkeley, are strolling in Yosemite's valley area. They don't know each other, study different fields. One's an economist, the other a scholar, but both are described by friends as phenomenally smart. They tell their friends they're going for a short walk, a quick jaunt in the twilight. But they never return. No trace, no explanation. Their families wrote desperate letters to President Eisenhower begging for special forces to intervene, but their pleas were denied. 2 young men with bright futures ahead were swallowed by Yosemite's shadows. The context of these disappearances isn't just forests or mountains. It's a world where weather can turn into an enemy. Torrential rain washes away tracks, thick snow buries clues, and fog transforms trails into mazes. In Dennis Martin's case, just hours after he vanished, a 7-day downpour erased any hope of finding evidence. In Oregon, a 78-year-old hunter named Robert Winters disappeared in 1969 during a snowstorm, leaving behind a rifle. Leaning against a tree and a single shoe, but no body, no bones, no sign of him. These weather events don't just hinder searches. They seem to be part of the mystery, as if nature itself is conspiring with whatever is taking these people. And then there are the details that send chills down your spine. In Vail, Colorado, an emergency room doctor named James McGrogan, a brilliant fit man who loved marathons, vanished while hiking with friends. He carried enough gear to survive 2 weeks in the wilderness, from a tent to an avalanche beacon. But months later, his body was found 6 miles from where he was last seen, in a dry creek bed with his skis still on his back, but no shoes. The coroner's report revealed a detail kept from the public. He died from a head wound, but his shoes, which any hiker would guard with their life, were gone. Who or what took them? And why? These national parks, from Yosemite to Great Smoky Mountains, aren't just tourist destinations. They carry a dark history where tales of disappearances have become part of local lore. Near Arizona's Chiricahua National Monument, a woman from Las Cruces with partial blindness and short-term memory loss vanished in 2019, just steps from a crowded campground. No one heard anything, no one saw anything, and even the best tracking dogs couldn't pick up her scent. Stranger still, this area was once the site where a park ranger named Paul Fugate disappeared in 1980 and was never found, one of the only cases of a National Park Service employee vanishing without a trace. These stories don't just make you wonder what happened. They spark theories that make your mind reel. Were these people abducted by a sophisticated criminal group exploiting the isolation of the wilderness? Or did they stumble into a natural accident, getting lost, falling off a cliff, or attacked by wildlife? But if it was wildlife, why no blood, no drag marks, no bones? A bolder theory is the supernatural. Could there be portals, invisible entities, or even extraterrestrials at work in these areas? Think of Jan Maccabee, a bow hunter in Ohio, who saw something straight out of Predator, a distortion in the air, moving between trees, captured in a blurry photo her phone shouldn't have been able to take. And scarier still at the same time, her nephew a mile away reported a UFO light in the sky. But the theory that keeps me up at night is a larger conspiracy. In Jared's case, someone claiming to be an insider from the sheriff's office called his father Alan and said they're not telling you the whole truth. In Dennis Martin's case, an FBI agent linked to multiple disappearances later took his own life, and key documents never mentioned critical witnesses. The National Park Service refuses to release lists of missing persons, despite having hundreds of trained law enforcement officers. Is there a force, government, military, or something secret covering up these vanishings? And if so, why could people like Dennis Jared or James McGrogan have held a secret they didn't even know about? Each disappearance is a story of people of dreams, hopes, and pain. Dennis Martin wanted to be an architect like his dad. James McGrogan saved hundreds of lives in the ER. Orvar and Walter had academic futures ahead. But they're not just numbers on a missing persons list. They're sons, fathers of friends, and people someone is still waiting for. These families have spent lifetimes searching for answers, from writing to presidents to climbing treacherous mountains themselves. And I, as the storyteller, have stood with them, felt their pain, and seen Mr. Martin's tears as he recounted the moment his son vanished. These stories aren't just mysteries. They're warnings about what might be lurking in places we think are safe. But to understand why these people vanished, we need to dig deeper into their final moments, the trails they walked, the strange clues they left behind, and the mysteries that make even seasoned investigators shudder. Let's step into the darkness of these forests, where nothing is as it seems. The trails in America's national parks aren't just paths through the trees. They're places where time seems to stop, where a single moment can erase someone's existence. When Dennis Martin ran to hide behind a tree at Spence Field, when Jared walked a trail in Colorado, or when James McGrogan pulled ahead of his friends in Vail, none of them knew they were stepping into a mystery that would haunt those left behind forever. Their final moments, the clues they left, and what happened next don't just chill you. They defy all logic. let's rewind the clock, set foot in these shadowy forests, and follow the bizarre traces left by those who vanished, traces that seem to tell a story no one wants to hear. Start with Dennis Martin, the 6-year-old, who disappeared in June 1969 at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It was a warm afternoon sunlight filtering through the trees, the air filled with children's laughter as they played hide-and-seek. Dennis, with his brown hair and bright eyes, was with his father, grandfather, and brother at Spence Field, a grassy area near the Appalachian Trail. The Martin family had just met another family also named Martin, a strange coincidence that later made people wonder if it meant something. The two families let their kids play together, and Dennis, despite a slight learning disability, eagerly joined the hide-and-seek game. His father, William Martin, stood just yards away, eyes fixed on his son, as Dennis darted to hide behind a tree. "I saw him clearly," Mr. Martin later said, his voice breaking. "He was right there. I didn't blink. 30 seconds, maybe 40. That's all the time that passed before everyone shouted, 'Come out, Dennis!' But there was no giggle, no patter of running feet. The tree Dennis hid behind stood silent, as if guarding a secret. Mr. Martin rushed over, checking around the trunk under the grass behind rocks. No Dennis, no footprints, no broken branches, nothing but the faint whistle of the wind. In those fleeting seconds, the boy had vanished, as if swallowed by the air itself. But the story doesn't end there. 2 miles away at a place called Rowan's Creek, another family, the Keys, was hiking, looking for a spot to see bears. They didn't know about Dennis, but at the exact moment he disappeared, their 12-year-old son pointed up a hillside and said, "Dad, look, there's a bear running around." His father, Mr. Key, squinted. "That's no bear, son," he said, his voice dropping. "That looks like a man, but he's hiding behind trees." And then they heard it. A scream they described as sickening, like nothing we'd ever heard. Even stranger, what they saw wasn't fully reported by the press or police. A hairy figure with something on its shoulder moving swiftly through the trees. Now shift to Colorado, where Jared, another young boy, vanished on a trail 4 years before any clues were found. It was an ordinary day, sunlight streaming through the pines, birds chirping overhead. Jared, whose shoes were always untied because he didn't know how to tie them, was hiking with his family. He strayed from the group just for a moment, a blink, and was never seen again. 4 years later, in the summer, a group of hikers stumbled on a scene that froze their blood. 700 feet above the trail, at 9,500 feet, were Jared's clothes. Inside-out pants, a jacket scattered on the ground, a skull cap, and a human tooth placed neatly on a log. But what stunned everyone was his shoes. They sat on a boulder, vibrant, as if fresh from the store, no scratches, no sign of 4 harsh Colorado winters. Jared's father, Alan, later said the boy never tied his shoes, and if something had dragged him up that steep mountain, those shoes would have come off. So how were they there, pristine, like a taunting challenge? The story of James McGrogan in Vail, Colorado, sends even more shivers down your spine. James, a brilliant ER doctor, fit, and a marathon enthusiast, was hiking with friends on a spring day. He carried a backpack full of survival gear, a tent, food, an avalanche beacon enough to last 2 weeks in the wild. But James, with his strength and experience, decided to pull ahead of the group a bit. That was the last time his friends saw him. Months later, his body was found in a dry creek bed, 6 miles from where he was last seen, a distance almost impossible to cover in that rugged terrain and harsh weather. He still had his skis on his back, but his shoes, the one thing any hiker clings to, were gone. The coroner's report noted he died from a head wound, but couldn't explain why his shoes were missing. And get this, the sports shop where James rented his gear confirmed he had everything needed to set up camp and survive. So why didn't he? These clues aren't just odd, they seem to be trying to say something. In Maine, a 79-year-old hunter named Fortunato Rivera vanished in 1993 from a hunting blind where his son had left him. Fortunato, elderly and barely mobile, was told by his son, "I'll be back in 30 minutes," but when the son returned, his father was gone. 2 days later, Fortunato's body was found face up in a reservoir 2 miles away across a small mountain and boulder-strewn terrain. He had no coat, no shirt, no shoes. The coroner concluded he died of hypothermia and a heart attack, but how could an old man barely able to walk cover that distance in under half an hour? And why was he face up, a rare position for drowning victims? In Oregon, the story of Robert Winters, a 78-year-old hunter, adds to the mystery. In October 1969, Robert was hunting with his 3 sons near Sparks Lake, 2 miles from Mount Bachelor. As darkness fell and snow began to pile up, Robert didn't return to the meeting point. His sons called for help, and a massive search with 60 people, helicopters, and tracking dogs was launched. But there was nothing. 9 months later, a doctor named Jack Crosby found a deer rifle leaning against a tree, along with a single boot, a glove, and glasses, all Robert's. But no body, no bones, no sign of him. Deputy Thrasher, who investigated, told me, "I've handled over 50 deaths in the woods, but I've never seen anything like this." It was like the scene was set up to challenge us. No bones, no animal signs, nothing. And then there's Jan Maccabee, a bow hunter in Ohio, who experienced something that made her swear off the woods behind her house. One September evening, Jan was in her hunting blind near Lima, Ohio, not far from her home. Around 6:21 p.m., she was texting a friend, when suddenly everything went silent. No birds, no squirrels, no rustling wind. It was like the forest was holding its breath, she said. Then she saw it, 15 to 20 feet away among the trees, a distortion in the air like looking through plastic wrap. It moved, gliding from tree to tree, and John, bow in hand, was too terrified to budge. She snapped a photo with her BlackBerry, and that photo later showed a blurry shape like a twisted DNA strand. Stranger still, her nephew at Shawnee High School, a mile away, reported seeing a massive light in the sky, at the same time glowing brightly, before shrinking and vanishing. When Jan and her husband, an optical physicist named Bruce Maccabee, reviewed the photo, Verizon confirmed the phone took it, but couldn't explain why the image had bizarre pixelation, as if it captured something technology wasn't meant to see. These clues aren't just evidence, they're pieces of a puzzle that won't fit. Why were Jared's clothes inside out? Why were James McGrogan's shoes gone, but his skis remained? Why was Fortunato Rivera's body face up in the reservoir, as if carefully placed? And why do the best tracking dogs and top trackers fail time and again? In the case of Eric Smith, a 41-year-old mine foreman in Virginia, 8 bloodhound teams were brought to his 40-acre property in 2013, where he vanished while hunting. Eric, who'd lost an eye in a work accident and felt unwell before leaving, walked land he knew like the back of his hand. But not one dog picked up his scent. No trace, no clue, despite hundreds of friends and co-workers from Consol Energy joining the search. These events aren't just strange because of the vanishings, they're strange because of how they happened. Most victims disappeared in seconds or minutes, when a lone dentist behind a tree. Jared straying from family, James ahead of friends, Fortunato waiting for his son. No screams, no signs of struggle, just silence. And when clues appear, they're often in places that make no sense. Aaron Hedges, a 38-year-old elk hunter in Montana, vanished in 2014 after splitting from his group. 6 months later, his boots, orange vest, and backpack were found in different areas far apart and illogical for a hunting trip. Who takes off their boots and backpack while hunting, I wonder? That's your lifeline: food, water, survival. But Aaron, like so many others, left those items like an unreadable message. These details make me think there's something bigger, darker at play. Could these people have been snatched by a criminal group exploiting the wilderness's isolation? But if it's abduction, why no traces, no ransom demands? Or were they attacked by wildlife like the mountain lion the sheriff claimed in Jared's case? But 4 experts ruled that out. No blood, no drag marks, nothing an animal would leave. Did they get lost and succumb to the elements? But how do you explain impossible distances like Fortunato's 2-mile trek or James's 6-mile journey? And then there's the theory that chills me. Could an otherworldly entity like what John Maccabee saw be taking these people? Or worse, is the government, with its locked doors and hidden files, covering up something horrific? These clues, as strange as they are just the beginning. To understand what really happened, we need to look at what was done to find them, the investigations, the failures, and the secrets buried by those tasked with finding the truth. Let's step forward into the desperate efforts to uncover answers and the bold theories waiting to be explored. The bizarre clues, Jared's vibrant shoes, Jan Maccabee's blurry photo, the sickening scream echoing through the woods, are just scattered pieces taunting those who seek the truth. In the shadowed depths of America's national parks, where trails vanish into fog and rivers guard their silence, investigators have plunged into desperate searches, only to slam into invisible walls. From dedicated rangers to the best tracking dogs, from helicopters scanning the skies to secretive special forces, every case from Dennis Martin to Jared to James McGrogan has seen efforts to unravel the mystery. But instead of answers, they've found only more questions, overlooked leads, and a chilling sense that something or someone is deliberately hiding the truth. Let's dig into these investigations, their heartbreaking failures, and the bold theories that might make even seasoned investigators tremble. When Dennis Martin vanished at Spence Field in June 1969, his family's initial response was pure panic. His father, William Martin, sprinted 2 miles down the Appalachian Trail, calling his son's name until his voice gave out. Nothing. He ordered his own father, Dennis's grandfather, to head downhill and alert the rangers. Within hours, a search team was deployed, but then the rain came, a torrential downpour lasting 7 days, turning trails to mud and erasing any possible tracks. Hundreds of rangers, volunteers, and even a Green Beret regiment were brought in. But here's the odd part: the special forces operated alone, refusing to communicate with rangers or rescuers, using their own radio system. They searched it in silence, and when they left, they filed no reports. It makes me wonder, were they looking for a 6-year-old boy or something bigger? But the most critical clue in Dennis's case was ignored. The Key family, who heard the scream and saw a hairy figure carrying something at Rowan's Creek, contacted the FBI, offering to lead investigators to the exact spot. Instead of accepting, an FBI agent and a park official said, "Don't come to the park. We'll come to you." They never did. Worse, the Key family's information, especially the detail about the figure carrying something, was left out of official records. Mr. Martin only learned of it weeks later from a newspaper, and he was livid. With Dwight McCarter, a top park tracker, Mr. Martin retraced the route from Spence Field to Rowan's Creek, proving it was possible to cover the distance in the reported time frame. But the FBI insisted it was impossible. Why, as Mr. Martin revealed to me in a tearful conversation, did the FBI agent involved in the case, who appeared in multiple disappearances, later take his own life? Jared's case in Colorado shows similar gaps in the investigation. After his clothes and tooth were found 4 years later, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI, analyzed them and reached a shocking conclusion: not a drop of blood, no sign of animals or struggle. But oddly, before these results were released, the local sheriff held a press conference claiming Jared was killed by a mountain lion. This statement spread across newspapers, leading some to criticize Jared's family for making a fuss over an animal attack. But 4 independent experts, after reviewing the evidence, ruled out a mountain lion entirely. No blood, no drag marks, no claw marks, nothing. And then there was a mysterious call to Alan Jared's father from someone claiming to be an insider at the sheriff's office. "They're not telling you the whole truth," the caller said before hanging up. Who were they? And what was the truth? The search for James McGrogan in Vail was equally riddled with questions. After he vanished, his friends immediately raised the alarm, and a rescue team was deployed. But the rugged terrain with steep cliffs and dense forests made searching nearly impossible. Months later, when his body was found in a dry creek bed 6 miles away, investigators were baffled. How could someone like James, fit, smart, and fully equipped, travel that far without setting up camp or using his survival gear? And why were his shoes gone while his skis remained on his back? I contacted the sports shop where James rented his equipment, and they confirmed he had everything needed to survive. So what stopped him from using it? In Maine, Fortunato Rivera's 1993 case adds to the strangeness. After he vanished from the hunting blind, his son and grandson searched for hours before calling in rescuers. Maine's Warden Service launched a major search with dogs and law enforcement, but found nothing. 2 days later, Fortunato's body was discovered face up in a reservoir 2 miles away across a small mountain and boulder-strewn terrain. Investigators concluded he died of hypothermia and a heart attack, but his son didn't buy it. "My dad could barely walk," he said. How did he get through that terrain in under 30 minutes? And why did he remove his coat shirt and shoes in November's freezing weather? These investigations didn't just fail to find the victims, they were hampered by inexplicable barriers. In the case of Robert Smith, a 70-year-old hunter who vanished in Maine, in 1997, likely a typo as the search involved helicopters and National Guard, suggesting 1997, a massive effort was launched. Over 250 wardens, 2 planes, 2 helicopters, and multiple dog teams scoured 18,000 acres for 9 days. Even 20 personnel from the Naval Aviation School, a secretive nearby facility, joined in. But nothing was found, not even the bright orange vest Robert wore. On day 6, the lead warden admitted, "This case has us totally baffled." And stranger still, fog and snow repeatedly disrupted the search as if nature was hiding something. These limitations aren't just technical. I've filed dozens of Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests for data on park disappearances, but they're always denied. A National Park Service agent once told me flat out, "You'll never get these files." When I asked why, he said no need to know. Why would an agency with 600 trained law enforcement officers not track missing persons? And why in Dennis Martin's case was the Key family's critical information buried the frontline rangers? I've met the ones in Smokey Bear hats, are some of the most dedicated people you'll ever meet. They love their job, love the forests they protect. But even they feel stymied by higher-ups issuing orders from distant offices. These failures lead us to theories, some plausible, some that make you check the shadows. First, consider human abduction. Maybe people like Dennis Jared or Fortunato were targeted by a criminal group exploiting moments of solitude. The Key family saw a figure carrying something, and the mysterious call to Alan suggests someone knows the truth. This theory explains the lack of traces. A quick, planned abduction might leave nothing. But what's the weakness? No specific suspects, no ransom demands. And why target a 6-year-old or an elderly hunter? If it's abduction, what's the motive? The second theory is a natural accident. Perhaps these people got lost, fell off cliffs, or died of hypothermia. James McGrogan had a head wound, and Fortunato was said to have died of a heart attack. The rugged terrain and harsh weather make this plausible. But how do you explain impossible distances? Fortunato's 2-mile trek, James's 6-mile journey. And why no bones, no signs of struggle, just oddly placed items? If it's an accident, why are Jared's shoes pristine after 4 winters? The third theory is animal attack. In Jared's case, the sheriff initially claimed a mountain lion. But 4 experts ruled that out. No blood, no drag marks, no claw marks, nothing an animal would leave. In Robert Winters' case, Deputy Thrasher confirmed no animal signs, no scat, nothing. If it was wildlife, there'd be remains, or at least partial bones. So where are they? The fourth theory chills me: supernatural phenomena. John Maccabee saw a distortion in the air like Predator's creature, and her photo showed an inexplicable shape. Her nephew reported a UFO light at the same time. In other cases, the sudden silence of the forest, the failure of dogs, and clusters near water or mountains suggest something beyond our understanding. There's an old book, The Great Lakes Triangle, documenting strange vanishings around the Great Lakes, similar to these cases. Could there be portals, invisible entities, or even extraterrestrials? This explains the oddities, but the lack of hard evidence makes it hard to swallow. Finally, the theory I can't shake: government conspiracy. The call to Alan, the FBI agent's suicide, and the Park Service's refusal to share data suggest something's being hidden. In Geraldine Margay's case, a hiker on the Appalachian Trail, she was found dead on Naval Evasion school land, a restricted area where investigators were only allowed with escorts. Why? And why are key documents like the Key Family's report buried? Could there be a secret program, an experiment, or a truth the government doesn't want us to know? The weakness is the unclear motive why target people like Dennis or Fortunato. But the secrecy makes me unable to dismiss it. My personal take: I don't think these vanishings are random. There's a pattern: brilliant minds like James McGrogan, vulnerable people like Dennis Martin, fleeting moments of isolation. Maybe an entity or a group is exploiting these remote areas, and authorities, knowingly or not, are covering it up to avoid panic. What we see: shoes photos, mysterious calls, are fragments of a bigger truth, one someone doesn't want us to reach. It makes me wonder, are we really safe in these national parks? But while investigators wrestle with these mysteries, there are those hit harder than anyone: the families, the communities, and those still waiting for answers. Let's explore their pain, their relentless efforts, and how these vanishings have changed how we see the places we once called paradise. While investigators grappled with inexplicable clues and locked doors of secrecy, there are those who carry a heavier burden. The families left behind, the communities haunted, and the hearts still beating with faint hope that one day the truth will emerge. Every shoe left behind, every blurry photo, every scream in the wilderness isn't just part of a mystery, that they're deep cuts into the souls of loved ones. From the forests of Great Smoky Mountains to the rugged peaks of Colorado, the disappearances of Dennis Martin, Jared James McGrogan, and others aren't just news stories. They're scars that never heal, sleepless nights, and haunting questions. Why my child? Why my loved one? Let's step into the world of those left behind, where pain intertwines with resilience, and see how these mysteries have forever changed how we view the national parks we once saw as paradise. Imagine you're William Martin Dennis's father, standing by the tree where your son vanished in June 1969. You ran 2 miles down the Appalachian Trail, shouting his name until your voice broke, but only the wind answered. You stayed in Great Smoky Mountains National Park for 6 weeks, refusing to leave despite torrential rain and fading hope. When I met Mr. Martin years later, knocking on the door of the house, he never left afraid to move. In case he missed a clue about Dennis, he stepped out with red-rimmed eyes. "I've spent my whole life trying to put this behind me," he said, his voice trembling. "I promised my wife I wouldn't talk about it anymore, but you came from California, and I know you understand this case better than anyone." In 15 minutes on his porch, he recounted the moment his son disappeared, his fury, when he learned the Key family saw a hairy figure but was ignored by authorities, and the pain of learning the FBI agent involved took his own life without explanation. His pain wasn't just losing his son, it was the betrayal by those who were supposed to help find him. This pain isn't just the Martins. In Colorado, Alan Jarrett's father got a mysterious call from someone claiming to be a sheriff's office insider, saying they're hiding the truth from you. Alan never learned who they were, but that call haunted him. He and his son climbed the mountain where Jared's clothes were found, a grueling trek with a 70% incline littered with boulders and treacherous terrain. "There's no way something dragged Jared up here and kept his shoes," Alan said, his voice firm. But those shoes vibrant, as if new, sat on that boulder, a cruel reminder that answers were out of reach. Alan didn't just lose his son. He lost faith in the system, in the people he once trusted to bring Jared home. In Maine, Robert Smith's family, whose 70-year-old patriarch vanished in 1997, carries the same pain. Robert, fresh from beating cancer and cleared to hunt, was at the family's hunting camp, a place he knew like his own backyard. When he didn't return, his wife and brothers searched, calling his name into the night. The 9-day search involved 250 Warden's helicopters and even personnel from the secretive naval evasion school nearby. Nothing, not the bright orange vest. He wore no trace. A year later, Robert's family returned with private searchers, hoping to find even a fragment to ease their grief. But the forest stayed silent. He knew that land like the back of his hand, his wife said. How could he just vanish? That question isn't just the Smiths' pain. It's the echo of hundreds of families from Yosemite to Arizona. These families didn't just endure loss, they fought. The families of Orvar Van Was and Walter Gordon, the UC Berkeley students who vanished in Yosemite in 1954, wrote to President Eisenhower pleading for special forces to step in. "Our sons didn't walk away, they were taken," they wrote, desperate. But their request was denied, leaving them with endless nights of wondering and no closure. In Arizona, the mother of the Las Cruces woman, who vanished near Chiricahua National Monument in 2019, stayed at the campground, hoping her daughter would return from her short walk to the car. But she didn't, and the mother, heartbroken, faced the reality that even the best tracking dogs found nothing. Communities didn't stand idle either. In Eric Smith's case, the 41-year-old mine foreman who vanished in Virginia in 2013, hundreds of co-workers from Consol Energy dropped their tools to search his 40-acre property. They combed every bush, every creek, hoping for a sign. But the land Eric knew so well gave only silence. In Maine, the community around Garfield Plantation rallied for the Smiths, holding vigils and raising funds for private searchers. These efforts weren't just solidarity. They were a way to confront the fear that anyone could be next. But while families and communities fought, the media often muddied the waters. In Jared's case, the sheriff's rushed claim of a mountain lion attack spread across newspapers from local rags to sensational headlines nationwide. Why is this family making a big deal out of an animal attack? Some commented, unaware that experts had debunked it. That narrative hurt Jared's family and shifted focus from the bizarre clues like the vibrant shoes or the tooth on a log. In Dennis's case, the Knoxville Times ran a series on the disappearance, but left out the key family's critical detail, the hairy figure carrying something. Why was there pressure from authorities to keep quiet about unexplainable details? Social media, though limited in older cases, played a role in newer ones. In Jan Maccabee's case, her nephew's Facebook post about a UFO light at Shawnee High School unknowingly corroborated her strange experience. Posts like these, along with my books and online maps like Missing 411, have spread awareness of the pattern. At a recent conference in Washington, dozens of people approached me saying, "We've known this has been happening for years, but the press won't touch it." These conversations reveal a troubling truth. The public is starting to see that national park symbols of natural beauty might be hiding a dark secret. The impact of these disappearances goes beyond families and communities. It's changed how we live and think. I used to love national parks, hiking shaded trails without a care. But now, I never go alone. I carry a personal locator beacon, a gun, and always tell someone exactly where I'm going and when I'll be back. If I don't return, come find me, I say, half joking, half serious. But it's not just me. Many, after hearing these stories, have changed their habits. Families don't let kids roam freely on trails anymore. Hunters stick together, staying in radio contact. And in towns near parks like those around Yosemite or Great Smoky Mountains, an unspoken fear has crept in. Are the forests really safe? These vanishings have also tapped into deeper American fears. They echo cases like Maura Murray, who vanished on a rural road, or John Benet Ramsey, where suspicions of a cover-up linger. They touch on our collective dread of disappearing without a trace, of places where technology, law, and logic fail. And when I look at the Missing 411 map, with clusters around the Great Lakes, along the Appalachian Trail, and on the Pacific coast, I can't help but think of legends about cursed areas where people enter and never return. Near Arizona's Chiricahua National Monument, locals whisper of a curse after the vanishings of Ranger Paul Fugate and the Las Cruces woman. These superstitions, though unproven, reflect a truth: we fear what we don't understand. The long-term impact of these disappearances isn't just fear, it's a wake-up call. They raise questions about the transparency of agencies like the National Park Service, which refuses to share missing persons lists, despite hundreds of law enforcement officers. They make us rethink how we protect the places we love. And they remind us that no matter how advanced our technology, some mysteries remain out of reach. But one thing is clear: the families of Dennis, Jared, Robert, and hundreds of others haven't given up. They still search, still hope, and still demand the truth. So what's left after all the efforts, tears, and strange clues? A mystery still open, questions unanswered, and a sense that the truth out there somewhere is waiting for someone brave enough to find it. Let's turn to what remains of these stories and see if we can get any closer to the answers or only deeper into the darkness. After all the strange clues, the desperate searches, and the tears of families left behind, we stand before a mystery as wide open as the forests that swallowed Dennis Martin, Jared James McGrogan, and hundreds of others. The vibrant shoes on a boulder, the blurry photo capturing something inexplicable, the screams echoing in the dark, they're all pieces of a puzzle that never comes together. In America's national parks, where majestic nature hides sinister secrets, these stories aren't just disappearances. They're warnings calls from those who vanished, and a challenge to us: is the truth out there somewhere? Or has it been buried forever beneath the trees and behind the locked doors of authorities? Let's look back at what we know, what we may never understand, and reflect on what these mysteries mean for the heart of America. Go back to Dennis Martin, the 6-year-old who vanished in 30 seconds at Spence Field in 1969. His father, William Martin, spent a lifetime seeking answers, but passed away with unhealed pain. And an unanswered question: where did his son go? The Key family, who heard a chilling scream and saw a hairy figure carrying something, were dismissed by authorities, and the FBI agent involved took his own life, taking any secrets to the grave. In Colorado, Jared left behind vibrant shoes and a tooth on a log, but no blood, no trace to explain what he encountered. James McGrogan, with skis on his back, but no shoes, lay in a dry creek bed 6 miles from where he disappeared, an impossible journey. Fortunato Rivera, a 79-year-old man, crossed 2 miles of rugged terrain to lie face up in a reservoir, stripped of his clothes as if guided by an unseen force. And Jan Maccabee, with her blurry photo of a predator-like distortion, still shudders at the memory of the forest falling silent. These clues, as strange and terrifying as they are, don't lead to answers, they lead to deeper questions. Who placed Jared's shoes on that boulder? And why were they untouched after 4 brutal winters? What made the best tracking dogs fail from Eric Smith's familiar land to the Las Cruces woman near Chiricahua National Monument? Why does the National Park Service, with hundreds of law enforcement officers, refuse to share missing persons lists? And why are my Freedom of Information Act requests blocked with a cold? No need to know. And above all, what took these people, children, hunters, scholars, and left behind clues like a sick game? As I sit here thinking of families like Dennis's, Jared's, or Robert Smith's, I feel a profound ache. These people aren't just victims of a mystery, they're humans with dreams, hopes, and loved ones still waiting. William Martin dreamed of his son becoming an architect like him. Alan, Jared's father, still climbs the mountain where his son vanished, hoping for even a hint. Robert Smith's wife keeps the family hunting camp a way to feel his presence. These families didn't just lose loved ones, they lost trust in the system and the safety of places that were symbols of freedom and exploration. And as I've talked to them, stood on those cold trails, or sat in homes filled with memories, I've changed. I no longer see national parks as havens. I see shadows under the trees, secrets hidden by those in power. The meaning of these disappearances goes beyond the families. They tap into America's shared fears, fear of being erased without a trace, fear that the places we love most might be the most dangerous. They echo stories like Maura Murray vanishing on a lonely road, or the Bermuda Triangle where ships and planes disappear without explanation. But unlike those tales, these vanishings happen right here in America, in places millions visit every year. They make us wonder, are we really safe? And if the government or something bigger is hiding the truth, will we ever know? My personal reflection is this: I don't believe these vanishings are random. There's a pattern brilliant minds like James McGrogan, vulnerable souls like Dennis Martin, fleeting moments of solitude, and clues arranged like taunts. I can't shake the thought that a force maybe human, maybe beyond our understanding, is operating in these remote areas. And I believe the National Park Service, FBI, or some agency knows more than they're saying. That mysterious call to Alan the FBI agent's suicide and the hidden documents aren't coincidences. They're signs of a bigger truth, one someone doesn't want us to touch. But what haunts me most is the thought that Dennis, Jared, or Fortunato might not be the last victims. If we don't find answers, who's next? These stories aren't just tales to tell in the dark. They're a call to look deeper, ask questions, and reject easy answers. They remind us of life's fragility, of nature's power, and of mysteries we can't yet solve. They're a reminder of the families still waiting who climb mountains, knock on doors, and keep a candle of hope alive, even as it flickers. So what do you think? Was Dennis Martin taken by a wild man, as some believe? Did Jared stumble into a portal, as some speculate? Or is there a bigger conspiracy covered up by those in power, as that call to Alan hinted? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments. What theory chills you the most? What could explain the shoes, the signs, the screams? If you've heard a similar story, share it with us. Maybe together we can get closer to the truth. Don't forget to check out our other videos, where we'll dive into more mysteries, from shadowy trails to towns hiding secrets. Hit that subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss out. And the next time you step into a national park, when the sunlight glints through the trees and the wind whispers through the trails, remember these stories. Maybe the truth is out there somewhere, waiting for someone brave enough to find it.